One of the first things you see when you walk into the Art Institute, besides the lions, is a replica of the Parthenon marbles inside of the Grand Hall by all of the staircases. And the reasoning behind this is intentional. It's supposed to convey the significance and the grandeur of the Art Institute, and it's begging to be compared to the Greek Parthenon. And the reasoning behind this is that it wants to be treated with respect in the same way that the Greek Parthenon is. And also to kind of because the Art Institute has a little bit of an ego. They're trying to say like, hey, we're just as good as the Greek Parthenon. We have this historic value that is just as valuable as the Parthenon. Although there are many named galleries that seem to be named after a certain person, I chose the Pritzker Gallery because, well, everyone knows who the Pritzkers are. They're one of the most wealthiest, most powerful, families in Chicago, and we currently have one of them as our governor. And the question that I was asking when I went into that exhibit was, why did they choose the art that they chose? Why did they pick the certain pieces? Where did they get it from? How much money did they spend on it? Because if you have a lot of money, you aren't just going to spend it on art you don't like. You're going to pick things that maybe make you look good or just stuff you personally enjoy yourself. I also thought it was interesting that it wasn't named after a specific person. It was just named after the Pritzker family name. And so I was wondering that because they knew that when they were purchasing this stuff, that it was going to end up in Chicago, which is where the Pritzker family is located in, why did they choose these things? And did they do it to try and influence the people, to be like, hey, these Pritzker guys are pretty cool. They have pretty good taste in art. Something I noticed while at the Art Institute is that some places were substantially louder than others. Now, obviously, the food court is going to be much louder than a normal exhibit, but even besides that, certain exhibits, there were much more people and the level of noise was much larger. And I was wondering, what did the Art Institute do to create this type of environment, to make it so that some people feel the need to be quiet in certain exhibits and other people are fine with just talking about them. And I think one of the things is that the religious artifacts tended to be more quiet, especially the Christian one, because the US and Chicago in general is a Christian state. It's majority Christian. And so people might have been praying there. And so people have probably felt the need to be respectful of people who see this as their religion and want to pray, do rituals, etc. Just want to do stuff there. And whereas something like the modern art, people probably aren't going to be praising the modern art, and it's more open to conversation because it's not considered as sacred. However, religion isn't the only reason why certain exhibits might be louder or more quiet than others. I think another good reason is just how the Art Institute itself is designed. So in certain galleries, there are more benches and there's more natural lighting, and I think more benches and natural lighting where you can see outside kind of promotes it, it promotes talking and doing stuff besides just looking at the art. And that natural light as opposed to artificial light kind of creates some noise, especially if you can see something outside, if the window is easy to see out of. And I think that the architecture has influenced how people interact with the art, because in certain exhibits it is much quieter than others. And I think that that is a deliberate choice by the Art Institute. Something else that I noticed while we were at the Art Institute is that the Art Institute definitely had a distinct culture. And I think that that culture is characterized by it being like a culture of wealth. I noticed that there were students that were learning there, and everyone was kind of just chill with them learning. But if you notice, they were wearing uniforms, which is normally a sign that they're trying to keep the kids safe and keep them all together so they're easily recognizable. But it's also probably because they go to a private school, which indicates that their parents had to have some amount of wealth and didn't just send them to a public school. Another thing that indicates this kind of culture of wealth is that while I was there, I found that there was a bench and someone just left their phone on it. I don't know if they were nearby or something like that, but I think that kind of shows the type of people who go to the art institute don't need to steal someone else's phone. And that's not necessarily like a good or a bad thing. I mean, obviously it's good no one has to steal, but I'm saying that it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing that wealthier people tend to go because like poor people tend to just not have the time or the resources. Something else that I noticed is that there are also barriers that don't really act as like real barriers. They don't. If you want to touch the art, you really could, and instead the true barriers are the lasers that make noise whenever you get too close. And I think that this is important because it doesn't actually prevent you from touching the art. There isn't like a glass in front of most of these art pieces. But the social anxiety of doing something that makes you not fit in with the rest of the people, you're not, obviously, if you're touching the art or something like that, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I feel like with wealthier people, they tend to care more about fitting in and being like the rest of the group than poorer people. I mean, just look at like, I think a good example is somewhere like New York City. New York is known for being like, you can do kind of whatever you want there. You can dress however you want. But then if you went to somewhere like even Mount Prospect, like a nice suburban neighborhood that's like pretty wealthy, there are people who are going to judge you more, and that's partially because they have the money to be able to afford to dress however they want.
In conclusion, examining the Art Institute as an object was a very unique academic experience that allowed Aidan and William to grasp a deeper understanding of the context of the artifacts we examined. Utilizing the tools of religious studies, we were able to separate our devotional voices from our academic voices and look beyond the individual piece to observe everything about an artwork before admiring its beauty.